Namaskaram, Sat Sri Akal, Jai Jinendra, and Vande Matram, everyone. Sarvebhyo Namaha. Welcome to Karma Kshetra. Thank you for joining me today. The topic of today's monologue is vegan Hindu. Now, before jumping into the core topic, for the benefit of all the listeners, especially the ones who may not know or perhaps not clear, I'll just spend some time on defining or like explaining what being vegan is. Okay, so what is a vegan? So, vegan primarily is anyone who is refraining from products that originates from animals. So, while a more popular definition or a more popular understanding is that it's mostly like the food products that vegans typically uh, look for when it comes to animal sourcing, or rather not having animals sourced. uh, but it's not necessarily just the food products, because a lot of other products like clothes or accessories or bags or things like that, which are made of animal products like leather, or are some cosmetics which get animal tested. So vegans will normally avoid that as well, as much as possible, and as much as it depends on whether it's a necessary product or it's not. Or and a lot of companies actually have gone into avoiding animal testing altogether. There are many products which are for leather, so a lot of many companies are now going completely animal free in their products. So yeah, so a vegan would go into that. When it comes to food, a vegan is someone who just avoids dairy and meat. And when we say dairy, everything dairy, like right from milk till cheese, the dairy version of cheese, or butter, ghee, things like that. Anything which originates from milk. Uh, Having said that, a vegan diet includes grains, fruits, vegetables, pulses, lentils, beans, oils, spices, condiments, syrups like maple and agave, which are like substitute to honey. Non-dairy milk includes soya, almond, coconut, oat, cashew, macadamia, rice, and many other new, emerging non-dairy milk alternatives. So yeah, we eat a lot. We can be. It need not necessarily be healthy. So, but yeah, vegan diet includes a lot of things. So you won't be starved for sure. Okay, so that is about who is a vegan. I have been vegan myself for more than about 5 years now, and I wouldn't say 100% still, but definitely, like, if I need to put a percentage, I would probably say around 95%. And like 5% will mostly include when we're going to someone's place and they are not, we'll tell them, but we don't want to give them trouble as well, because uh, this requires some specific adjustments as well. So uh, we tend to be a little flexible there. Or if we are out traveling somewhere, sometimes we may not get an option and we go for vegetarian in that case. But yeah, definitely nothing more than vegetarian. Yeah. Okay, so vegan is fine, but the title is vegan Hindu. So what is so Hindu about that? Like, why did I place the word Hindu in that? So there are a couple of reasons. Number one, a majority of the discourse on veganism is from the Western perspective. Now, to be fair, at least based on what I've searched and what like Time magazine says, veganism started in the Western world in like, so around November 1944, and this I'm pulling it out from the Time magazine's article. Uh, Around November 1944, a British woodworker named Donald Watson announced that because vegetarians ate dairy and eggs, he was not going to create a new term. He was going to create a new term called vegan to describe the people who did not. By did not, he means did not eat dairy and eggs. Tuberculosis has had been found in 40% of Britain's dairy cows the year before, and Watson used this to his advantage, claiming that it proved the vegan lifestyle protected people from tainted food. 3 months after coining the term, he issued a formal explanation of the way the word should be pronounced: vegan and not vegan. Apparently, that's how it was pronounced, I guess, before that. So he wrote this in his new Vegan Society newsletter, which had 25 subscribers at that time. By the time Watson died at the age of 95 in 2005, there were 250,000 self identifying vegans in Britain and 2 million in the US. So, okay, so coming back uh, to my point, a majority of the discourse uh, on the veganism and talk about it is all from the Western perspective. And while there are people from the Eastern hemisphere who are also vegans, I think either they are not allowed or they are not like heard, or there's not enough voice around that. And so I wanted to put something out there, and I'll explain like how why this matters. Secondly, the veganism, and now when it comes to veganism in India, at this point, I get an impression that it's mostly among elites, and so there is a certain perception around that because of that. Uh, and The problem with the elites is they don't really talk about a Hindu perspective, and not necessarily like Hindu faith, but just a Hindu's perspective based on the daily experiences of Hindus, an average middle class Hindus. So it's not that, because even there is a very westernized one, which does not really sometimes take into consideration India's ground realities. And I'll actually come to that when we'll talk about this in detail. Uh, the third point, or maybe this is the fourth point, but the third point is basically there are a lot of morons with megaphones in India when it comes to veganism. PETA being the loudest one. So there are very few people who are actually taking things objectively without really being, ideologically driven or idealistic about a lot of things. Um, and last point, why I wanted to talk about this was that veganism invited a lot of critique to me when last time I visited India, and this was when even I didn't even ask anybody to become vegan. So that got me thinking that, okay, so I need to understand the whole thing more, and sort of prepare a case on why am I doing, what am I doing, and what does it make sense. So so in this podcast, I'll talk about some aspects I mentioned as reasons above, but also we'll try to bust some misconceptions, especially about the Hindu slash Indian perspective regarding veganism. All right, so let's go one by one. First, so about PETA India and veganism. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to veganism in India, PETA makes a lot more noise than anyone else. At the same time, PETA India is probably also the worst ambassador of veganism, or the vegan people, especially in India. It has been hurting vegans more than helping, if at all. A large part of it comes from PETA's own record of dealing with animals and its hypocrisy with the messaging, which is targeted only towards specific communities in India, where they know that they will not receive a violent response. So that sort of doesn't really sit well with masses, and especially in the era of technology and social media, where these things get apparent very easily. People, people remember, and a lot of people track of what you said earlier and what you're saying now and things like that. So and PETA has a very pathetic record on that. So secondly, like, PETA also appears to have absolutely no understanding of the ground realities in India, and is simply copy pasting the tactics they use in Western countries. Otherwise, you wouldn't really see them. Uh, you wouldn't expect them to throw in this Raksha Bandhan, go leather free, when nobody really wears leather Rakis. And asking people to treat cows as sisters in a country that treats cows as mothers really shows how really disconnected you are from the ground realities or the Indian ethos, Indian culture, or rather in this case, like, more specifically, Hindu culture. Uh, and to add fuel to fire, they end up giving awards to celebrities who end up celebrating turkey dishes just after few days of receiving those awards. And not to forget the mind-blowing fact checking that happened on it. So this happened, I think, a couple of years ago, when PETA basically awarded Shilpa Shetty some award on, like, Hero to Animals award for, and I quote, for her exemplary work, which includes speaking out against the cruelty of circuses, signing a petition asking the government to uphold the ban on Jallikattu, bull races, and bullfights, and adopting a stray kitten. So basically, these three, four things they awarded her. And about 5 days later, the same celebrity, Shilpa Shetty, she shares a roast turkey recipe video on her YouTube channel, which she runs, the name with the name by the name of The Art of Loving Food, and where she shares many other non-veg recipes. Uh, Perfectly fine. Your channel, your kitchen, you cook whatever you want, you share whatever you want. But you would expect someone like PETA to do some background check and understand the who you are giving the award to. And when this was highlighted on instead of accepting it, there's this newsmeter.in that did some fact check, which said, yeah, they are doing that, like, she's doing that. PETA honored Shilpa Shetty, and she shared a recipe of roast turkey on her YouTube channel, but the award was given for her work with PETA. Uh, so, yeah, like, theoretically or technically, you're trying to get out on on the basis of technicality, but that doesn't really sit well. And it's also a hypocrisy that PETA regularly targets pretty much all Hindu festivals, be it Raksha Bandhan, Diwali, Holi, Jallikattu, Janmashtami, but then, goes abba jabba dabba on other festivals. So, yeah, like, in the nutshell, PETA doesn't really uh, represent the vegans. Uh, Definitely not in India, and probably not anywhere in the world as well. Now, coming to, there's certain one more thing which gets uh, surprisingly thrown at vegans in India, is that veganism is anti-cow. And you know Now, giving some background around this, like India has been struggling for decades around cow smuggling within India as well as outside India as well. And this doesn't really happen without cattle theft. And even a single cow stolen can wipe out a major source of income for an Indian farmer. Um, like between 2015 and 2017, if you look at the numbers, 56,000, more than 56,000 cattle smuggling cases were registered in India. Uh, and these were the cases, not cattles. Uh, According to the data shared by the South Bengal Frontier or the BSF in 2019, 29,720 cattle heads, that's like 81 daily, were seized in 2019. And the numbers that made it through will definitely be higher. These were the ones which were seized. And this is just the Bangladesh border. Well, the number did come down in 2020, but that has a lot more to do with COVID lockdowns. It also needs to be noted that these statistics are just for the cross-country smuggling. The statistics for smuggling within India are extremely hard to find, if at all they exist. Like the illegal slaughterhouses alone were estimated to be 30,000 across India, and this was from one of the articles by Newsbread. Um, there are organizations like Cow Connect Foundation that has like saved thousands of cows in Gujarat alone, and like Agniveer in Delhi NCR, and I think even in Gujarat, that rescues about, I don't know, 15, 20 cows daily. Just an estimate. So one need to understand this and remember, like as I mentioned earlier, like even a single cow stolen can put a dent on a farmer's source of like income. So to answer the question, if veganism is anti-cow, no. Animal slaughtering is, and vegans don't slaughter animals. But you know who does? Guess. Okay, coming to adopting vegan in so how can you go about adopting veganism in dharmic manner? This was like one another thing which I was thinking, like does our the sacred texts uh, talk about it or anything? And from so far I know, I don't think there's anything specific about veganism itself. Like many Hindus, especially like vegetarians, have become resentful of veganism, particularly because of the dairy angle more than the meat angle, and PETA has just made it worse. Now, compound it with constantly undermined issue of cattle smuggling, which I just talked about earlier, that is ignored by mainstream media due to secularism, quote unquote, I would say. Uh, Even though wrong, one can understand where the resentment comes from. But then, there are many idiots which will allege that veganism will lead to more animals ending up in slaughterhouses, which is absolutely ridiculous. Slaughterhouses function because there are people who consume meat, not vegans, not because of vegans. Uh, a big part of misconception around veganism is also that it is a Western construct and is not really aligned to dharmic values. Yes, like those are also there, like people who are there like that. While it may be true that that the concept of veganism comes from the West, we need not adopt it as it is without applying our brains. We also don't need to reject it just because it comes from the West. There's no harm in deconstructing the whole concept and seeing which parts can be adopted and to what extent, which parts can take time to create a suitable ecosystem or like atmosphere, and which parts don't really make sense at all in Indian context. All these like will need to take place, keeping in mind the ground realities of India, and not just at a country level, but even at a micro or like individual level. Uh, and like if you believe, there's a channel called FitTuber which absolutely love. That guy makes amazing videos. Uh, in one of his videos, he mentioned, um, and I quote, Nowhere in the Ayurvedic scriptures it has been mentioned that milk should be a mandatory part of diet. Okay, so veganism is definitely not against Sanatana Dharma, and that's my personal conviction as well. Even like without the above evidence, I can clearly see this. It's nothing anti Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so coming to the next part, another misconception which is there in India is that veganism is sort of a rich class thing. Only rich people do it, only elites, and uh, only people with high amount of money can afford that kind of lifestyle, which is not really true. Unfortunately, it has been portrayed by the popular culture as this South Bombay urban elite culture and expensive lifestyle. Like, being vegan means you only eat salads, exotic fruits, vegetables like avocado. You have to eat kiwi. You have to eat quinoa, kale, and you only drink almond milk. You don't drink anything else. This is highly inaccurate when it comes to veganism. What Indians forget is that most of our vegetarian cuisine is inherently vegan, at least like some of the non Punjabi, non paneer cuisine. I can still enjoy poha or upma in the morning with coconut chutney and have aloo matar sabzi with paratha in lunch and enjoy a big bangan bharta with chapati in dinner. Uh, like vegan food includes all kind of grains, pulses, beans. I said before, like all vegetables, fruits. Just imagine the combinations. And in fact, some of the sweets like chiki and son papdi are vegan as well. And when one starts to looking, they'll definitely find more. So in fact, like turning vegan can actually drive down your grocery bill if you would not be buying that expensive meat, eggs, and processed dairy products. Uh, Even when it comes to non-dairy milk, one can be smart about it to find solutions, some of which are already available. I find it very funny when people, whenever they have to critique veganism in India, is like, "Oh, almond milk is so expensive, and how can you do you expect people to drink almond milk when almond is like these many rupees per kg, and how can you expect that?" It's this is like saying, "Oh, Indians cannot afford car. Look at the price of Rolls Royce." Or a more tangible example is what our eminent P. Chidambaram said when digital transactions was being talked about in Lok Sabha, where he said that, "Oh, do you expect all small vendors to who have a POS machine, everybody to have a credit card and swipe that card on that?" No, not really. Like there can be different solutions which you have probably not imagined, which probably doesn't exist around the world, but will exist in India because it works for India. So, like giving this almond milk uh, uh, straw man, I would say, is exactly that kind of argument with P. Chidambaram, or about the Rolls Royce argument which I made. It is very convenient for Amul to compare their milk with almond milk, because that is probably the most expensive non-dairy milk. Nut milks are of various types like soy, cashew, coconut, rice, oats, macadamia, even peanut milk, and so on. And a quick look. So when I go into, if I make a quick look on Nature's Basket website, it sort of, reveal like the unsweetened soy milk in India is about 135 rupees per liter. Now compare this to about 44 to like 56 price of Amul Taza. Oh, it is like 64 actually. So you have so good soy milk, unsweetened, 1 liter, available at 135, and Amul Taza on Big Basket. I see it's available at 64 rupees per liter. So compare these two. The non-dairy milk in India is actually already close to 2x or 3x, let's say. Let's stretch it a bit. 2x, 3x the price of the dairy milk, contrary to what 6x difference Amul is projecting. And the gap increases further when we talk about the A2 Deshi cow milk, which is typically close to around 100 rupees per liter. And let's not forget the plant based milks right now don't have the economies of scale that the dairy industry has. So, definitely not the one Amul has. So, as the demand increases, the competition increases, there'll be more players in the market, there'll be more consumption, the price will drop. And so, comparing the price of a large scale dairy milk with that of a small scale plant based milk is sort of unfair. If I talk about North America, where I am, the non dairy milk used to be expensive, but as the demand increased, the wholesale shops like Costco have started stocking non dairy milks as well. And like a carton of an organic soy milk in Canada, uh, which is like a 6 by almost 1 liter. It's almost like 5.6 liter if we, of 6 packs. It costs about $10.50, which turns out to be, if I convert it to INR, it's just 113 per liter. Compare that to regular organic $2, 2% milk. And I'm comparing organic with organic because the soy milk is organic. So the organic 2% milk is about 8.5 Canadian dollars, which is about like little more than 500 rupees for a 4 liter pack, which turns out to be 127.5 per liter. And we talked about the organic soy milk, which was 113 per liter. So you can see the difference. Like the organic soy milk is cheaper than the organic 2% milk. And this is just like at one place. The prices will vary, but broadly, this is like within the same range. And we are comparing organic with organic. So don't come to me with the 2% milk. See, this is very cheap. Yes, it's cheap, but it's not organic. So you have to compare like that. Now, if you want to, just close your eyes and say, like, okay, but in India, it is still expensive, then let's excuse the people who can't buy the expensive non dairy milk. What is the excuse for the ones who can buy? Maybe you can skip spending those $1,000 on shitty Bollywood movie and a popcorn or a third class overpriced restaurant and instead buy stuff that's actually helpful to you. Not just helpful to you, but helpful to environment. Now let's talk a bit about Indian dairy industry. I'm going into that as well because uh, while it's an important part of our Indian culture, we need to understand certain realities as well and understand what exactly is the part of our Indian culture. Because not the entire industry is a part of our culture or ethos, like the way it tries to project. So it needs to be understood that the case against dairy products is due to heavy industrialization, like factory farming in the dairy industry. While it may be less brutal than the beef farming, and there's an argument against that as well, but there's still brutality, be it the practice of injecting antibiotics, injecting hormones, using machines that vacuum the udders to extract the milk, artificial insemination, the risk of mastitis, or the practice of separating calves at birth. So, even keeping the emotions out, this is a very unhygienic and potentially harmful to humans as well, eventually. Potentially harmful way of running the dairy industry, and yet it happens. Now, when it comes to India, a common argument is that factory farming doesn't happen here. We as a society, especially the Hindus, have always treated cows as a mother. And when you visit villages, cows are taken care of like a family member. Very true. Uh, Now, let's take a look at one of the facilitator guide by ASCI, which is the Agricultural Skill Council of India, for the dairy farmer. So this guide, to be fair, like it does not discourage insemination. There are also sections on modern milking machines, which are the vacuum pumps. Although, like to its credit, it does discourage hormonal injections. There's one study which clearly mentions that the usage of milking machines and one of the main responsibilities of milk union as artificial insemination administration. Uh, Farmers in Gujarat also use milking machines to extract milk from cows, as the article mentions. So there's an article on by the Hindu Business Line, and let me just pull one quote from there. Uh, so take Shirish Bhai Vittal Bhai Patel from Chikhodra, 4 kilometers from Amul's Anand Dairy. This 47-year-old farmer has 200 cows and 60 heifers and sells 1800 liters daily. His animals are entirely machine milked at a parlor operating from 5:30 to 8:30 in the morning and likewise in the evening. So if one is under impression that the dairy industry in India is still very pristine, then the above information should burst the bubble. Yes, definitely, it is still way less factory farm than the West, but it's still there. Now let's come to Amul for a while. You know, uh, that has tried to like portray itself as a torch bearer of Hindu cow worshipping culture by invoking Lord Krishna, not Sri Krishna or Prabhu Sri Krishna, but Lord Krishna in their ad and holy cow. Now, while they are 100% right about the cultural part, using that to defend yourself when across India, Amul model is used for machine milking and artificial insemination, and to actually go on to say that dairy farming is good for the cattle is quite a bubble they are living in, or I would say self fulfilling prophecy. If we go a little deeper into Amul's offering of raw milk, like Amul has a bit of confused product range. Like you have Amul Deshi A2 cow milk, you have Amul cow milk. So the Amul cow milk, it's not Deshi A2 since there is a separate brand of Deshi A2. Then there is Amul Gold, which doesn't specify whether it is cow or buffalo. You have Amul Taza as well, which is again doesn't specify whether it is cow or buffalo. You have Amul Chai Maza, which is a homogenized milk that doesn't form a cream layer in tea. You have Amul Slim Trim, you have Amul Shakti, you have Amul Diamond, which has the highest fat content. You have like Amul Tea Special. You have Amul Buffalo Milk, and the packaging in Amul Buffalo Milk. If you go into Amul's website, the packaging says A2 milk. So Amul has Amul Deshi A2 cow milk and then Amul buffalo milk where the packaging says A2 milk. So the question is, what are the rest? A1 milk? Amul needs to print like that information very clearly on the pack. Now, if you look at one of the interviews by the Amul MD, Rupinder Singh Sodhi, in an interview to the Prince, Shekhar Gupta provided like a bit vague statements. Like one of them said, and I quote, be assured that in India, what you are drinking is A2 milk, as all buffalo and indigenous cow milk is 100% A2 milk. Quote ends. So, does he mean to say that all of Amul's milk is either from buffaloes or indigenous cows? If that is true, what is Shirish Pai from Chikhodra village doing with the 15 crossbred Holsteins from whom Amul packs the milk directly? And however, like amazingly, the number comes down from 100% in the form of be assured to 90% in the very next statement, as he says, and I quote again: all HF Holstein Friesian, all HF crossbred cows produce 50% A2 milk and 50% A1 milk. So 90% of milk in India is A2 milk. Now, quote ends. Now, what he doesn't mention is how much of Amul's share is from that 10% A1 milk, assuming that the 90% figure is true. And if the majority of Amul's milk is A2, why do they have two separate brands, Amul Deshi A2 cow milk and Amul buffalo milk, where the packaging mentions A2 milk? Um, so you can't have a spin-off of a mainstream product unless that spin-off is a minority. Like there's Maggie masala noodles, and then there's Maggie atta noodles and Maggie oats noodles, because the later two are not 100% maida. But Maggie can't come up with Maggie maida noodles apart from the reason that it'll be a marketing disaster. But like Maggie can't come up with Maggie maida noodles because that's what Maggie masala noodles is. So it doesn't really make sense. Now, there's a report by India Water Portal, which, uh, if we believe the numbers over there, like where most of the numbers are for the year 2012, 2013, greater than 50% of the milk produced in India is from buffaloes, while the crossbred account for like 22% of the total cattle population. Now, given that crossbreds have a higher yield, if we assume that the percentage share in the total milk production will be greater than 22%, so almost like 70, pardon, at most like 78% of total milk production in country can have A2 milk. And this is at a country level, not Amul. Again, like one must read the section, livestock crossbreeding, to understand how the crossbreeding basically destroys indigenous species, and like all for what. uh, there's another video which actually is really good, by FitTuber, where he has ranked milks from worst to best, and like one must watch this video to see the reality of Amul, like, and other brands milk products. So this video is titled Milk in India Ranked from Worst to Best, uh, by FitTuber. Definitely go and watch it. Okay, so what is like conclusion of all this, tale? So the dairy consumers in India will only make some sense if that dairy comes from a local dairy farmer, who is raising desi cow breeds, is not injecting hormones, is not using artificial insemination. You don't really artificially inseminate your family members, do you? and and is not using machines to milk the cow. Like, you may still want to take some liberty with the last point, but then, like, we can't be riding on this high horse that dairy is for cattle's benefit. But like, I don't see any reason why Indians should encourage foreign breed cows whose milk is low on nutrition, causes diseases, and is difficult to digest. Yeah, absolutely no reason. Also, one also needs to understand and think about like how much of the dairy in India is consumed in the purest form, like that is milk. Like, if we think about it, a huge part, and I don't have numbers right now, but like a huge part of our dairy consumption, I believe, involves like processed cheese, mayonnaise, flavored drinks, and sweets and things like that. And like tall claims of dairy, and through this, like the tall claims of the dairy for nutrition, in quotes, like that falls flat. uh, One more argument again, which I Here is also okay. Oh, yeah, okay. Dairy is this, dairy is that. But like, what will happen to all the farmers if everybody switch to, non-dairy? What will, and like, I find this like a very sarkari argument. And I'll tell you why. Like, often used, like, whenever there's a discussion on privatization or FDI in any sector, this is the argument. Like, what will happen to whoever is getting affected? What will happen to people who are in, this thing for decades? Or like, oh, so many people will lose their jobs, to lose their livelihood. Okay, first of all, what people forget is that the vegan lifestyle causes a demand shift, not a demand decline. People won't stop eating the overall amount of food. They will only stop eating a certain type of food and instead eat something else. And in case of vegan, the drop in dairy demands shifts to agricultural products like lentils and nuts, and which are already an occupation of a lot of dairy farmers. And remember, India is like one of those rare countries that can grow three crops a year. So let's not blame vegans for the inefficiencies of Indian agricultural, because which is largely because of government and politics, not even because of farmers to a very large extent. And like, to begin with, like, to let's not think of our farmers as not capable of learning anything new and in reinventing themselves, and like going into a different ways of farming or changing the ways according to, emerging technology and emerging demands. So let's not think of so small of them. Okay, so to conclude, so the couple of things I want to say. uh, like, vegetarians might still be able to, relate to this, since this is the favorite pastime of non-vegetarians. Like, they are also have been at receiving end, where, one of the favorite things of non-vegetarians is to prove that, so and so product has this 0.000000001% of, animal products. Oh, so like you and me, we are the same, right? Yes, you're like half kg chicken is the same as that one brand of beer that use like gelatin to clarify the end product, or, there's a very small tiny amount of some animal product which got used, um, to claim that a particular vegetarian product, oh, it has this animal product, so it is non-veg. So okay, so let's start eating chicken and pork and everything. Like, but the funny thing is, like, however, the same vegetarians won't shy away from applying these tactics to vegans. Now it is understood that many folks who are like, 99% vegans are still uh, contributing by bringing down their dairy and meat demand to like 1%, and mostly it will be a dairy demand rather than meat demand. uh, but like, that still means something. So you maybe like you can ditch cheese, mayonnaise, or paneer, or ghee, and like ice cream. But let's say you can't ditch your morning tea. Uh, that is still not bad. Or like, maybe you reduce your mithai intake and limit it only to festivals, that like, and that too, like when you're meeting a family and extended family. Let that be your cheat day. So the idea is to minimize the harm to the environment and live in as much harmony with nature as possible. And that is a very Sanatani thing to do. So with that, I'm concluding my talk. And so like, that's the end of like today's episode. Do let me know your thoughts, critiques in the comment section. Pardon my voice today and some interruption in between. I'm not really perfectly well. There's some throat thing going on. If you have listened so far, I really appreciate it. If you've liked the content, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon as well. If you're on YouTube, this will help me get encouragement to, create more such content for you. This is Karma Kshetra signing off. Jai Somnath.